Hello, and welcome back to Kybercodex. Today I have another lightsaber review for you. Today's offering comes to us from my partners over at X-Tech, and as always, beginning of the video disclaimer when I am reviewing a lightsaber from one of the companies I'm partnered with, this was not sent to me as a review sample, this was not sent to me as part of a paid advertisement or a video sponsorship. This came out of my own personal collection. I paid full price for this. The config on here is my own, and all statements and opinions about the saber are my own opinion. This is not an advertisement. With that said, and without any further ado, let's take a look. So this is, if you were to order the saber from my site, the mid-tier shipping box for X-Tech hilts. It's got nice logos on it. And another little short disclaimer before we go any further. There's a little display bag in here that is actually from 89 Sabers. That is not included if you buy one of these. I just like to display my hilt that's in this nice little display box with the display bag. So we are going to take a little look today at X-Tech's Luke Return of the Jedi Hero hilt. This is installed with a Proffieboard V2.2 in a removable chassis. It has a 2-button setup. You can ignore the poorly painted gray on the rails on the control box. I hand painted that when I had a hand injury right after I got this. I'm gonna redo it with an airbrush. It normally just comes in the raw copper, like the top rails. Personally, I think this is a quite accurate looking replica of Luke's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. Specifically, it's like the deleted cave scene Hero saber prop. So it's got the dual rail control box with the purple clamp card that you can slide out. Mine's on some double-sided tape to help keep the card in there, but it does have a functional reveal board with secondary power and aux buttons, so you can recreate the cave scene if you wanted to. It's got a nice, sturdy, and rigid D-ring. Really nice copper neck. Well-proportioned emitter. It's a little taller than it is in the movie, but it gives you a good blade stability for a thin neck. It doesn't really look out of proportion at a glance. Nice shine through on the blade plug. To my personal taste, it's not my absolute favorite Hero blade plug, but I have an extra V2 blade plug from my X-Tech V2 that I have not gotten around to weathering, so I normally just use that for display purposes. There's good sound venting on the pommel. It sounds quite nice. And accessories-wise, it does include a display pommel and 2 additional clamp cards. They're all double-sided, so you get the thin lines and the thick lines. You get this orange-red one, which I'm actually not sure what the orange-red one is supposed to be from offhand. But then you get black for Last Jedi, and then the blue-purple, which is pretty accurate for Return of the Jedi. Removing the pommel cap is quite simple if you want to switch the display pommel on. So nice looking static pommel if you're just trying to carry it on your belt for a cosplay or have it on the shelf for display and aren't intending to turn it on and actively use it at the time. The emitter is removable. It just threads off the copper neck. And then your pixel PCB is housed right in the copper neck. Do not unscrew down here. There is wiring running from the chassis connector to the pixel PCB. You do get 2 retention screws at like a 60-degree angle from each other, so it pushes your blade up like right over here. It's like a nice little triangle. It actually holds the blade really well. and having your rocker switch on the side of the control box for your power and aux, honestly quite comfortable. Mine came with power on the bottom and aux on the top, which in my experience is a little unusual for 2-button hilts. All my other 2-button hilts are power top, aux bottom, but I actually really like power on the bottom for the Luke Hero, so I've kept it that way. The red and green LEDs for the arrows on the control box are wired up to the Proffieboard for data. They do come pre-programmed with the Return of the Jedi cave scene blinky sequence, and I've kept that on as the blade style for the arrows on all of mine on this config. And then you get this nice removable chassis. It's quite similar to the one in my Cal Kestis hilt from X-Tech, which you can see in the first video on my channel. It's a really clean, solid chassis. So there's a little guide rail here for the grub screws in your control box. So this is always going to be the side facing your control box. These pins feed data to the red and green arrow LEDs from the Proffieboard and hit all 4 of your buttons in the control box. And then this goes to your pixel connector in the emitter. You have your kill switch here, speaker on the bottom. Under this protective cover on the back, you have your exposed USB-C recharge port, and then your rechargeable 18650 battery and your Proffieboard V2.2. Like all X-Tech hilts with a USB-C recharge port, the saber has to be turned on to charge. So if you plug it in while it's turned off, and then look at this hole here, the charge indicator LED here will flash red and green. But if you turn it on while it's charging, it will just pulse red, and then once it's fully charged, it will pulse green. Most other Proffieboard sabers you have to have turned off to charge, but the battery protection board in here requires it to be turned on for charging. And then they do include a blade. Mine has a 36-inch blade. This is an X-Tech Neopixel blade. It's got a 2.5mm blade wall. They do not come sanded, but I did lightly sand this one using 400, 600, and 800 grit sandpapers, just to improve the diffusion on the blade a little bit. Alright, so let's turn this on. You'll get to hear my boot sound. It's the LS6 Cave Scene version sound font from K-Sith that I'm starting on. It starts with the arrow sequence blinky sound from the cave scene. Now I'll pop this in here and you will see the arrow sequence start. And then once you feel both sets of pin connectors lock in place, you're good to screw your pommel on. And now you got your little cave scene blinkies. Quick final look at the hilt itself, just minor accuracy checks. Like I said, I think this is really quite accurate. If I wanted to be super nitpicky and say, if you're an absolute nut for screen accuracy, these are the things to watch for on this particular hilt, it would be the slightly extended proportions on the emitter and the slightly wider bottom ring on the emitter. It would be the needing to paint the gray on the bottom rails of the control box and do a better job than I did, but I'm going to strip that and airbrush it when my hand's fully healed. And these pommel cubes are a little bit tall. They're a little rectangular. In all seriousness, this is no mom of all heroes. It's not the #1 most screen accurate Luke hero out there, but it is very good. The only things that I can even notice, like I have mentioned, are very minor and don't bother me personally at all. So we can take a brief little look here at the clamp card and look at these hidden buttons. You'll see that they are functional. Bottom is power. Top is auxiliary. Same as on the control box. And you will notice that the arrows are solid now, but they do react to the control box like a crystal chamber on most other Proffieboard hilts would. And we'll get a look at the shine through on the blade plug. It does have a lit PCB, so no need for a Neopixel blade plug. Like I said, personally, I think the proportions on this blade plug in terms of how much shine through you get is a little bit much for me for the Hero. So I took my spare V2 blade plug and normally use that. And here's a little comparison of the blade plugs. The V2's is a little bit shorter. It's hollow on the bottom, and the Hero's is not. And then the V2's got a little ring around the nipple part, and the hole is smaller, so you get more shine through on the Hero one. And I think just proportionately, this looks a bit more like the static, like, belt hanger props, which is why I normally use this for display when it's on my shelf in conjunction with the static display pommel. I'll normally do the other ones if it's, you know, going out on my belt and going to be used and I have a blade in my bag or something. But just to give a nice little comparison. You can see these slightly different proportions on the V2 one, and here is the shine through difference. Alright, so we're just going to do a real brief comparison with two more Luke thin neck sabers before we put a blade in this and take a look at some blade styles and sound fonts from my own personal config, alright? Alright. So we've still got the X-Tech Luke Cave Scene Hero here in the middle. And then up on top, we have my TXQ Luke Last Jedi Hero. I am using the blade plug from the X-Tech Hero. And then down on the bottom, we have my X-Tech Luke V2 that I custom weathered. It's got a Skywampa clamp card. And there's a custom chassis in it that was designed and 3D printed by Breezy Saberworks. And I mean, there's not much to say comparison between the two Hero hilts. This one is based on Return of the Jedi. This one is based on The Last Jedi. This one is pretty close to screen accurate for Return of the Jedi. And this one is visually recognizable as The Last Jedi one, but not particularly screen accurate. If I had to, you know, pick between the two Hero hilts, I'm picking the X-Tech one every time, and I'm not trying to say that from a place of bias because I'm a vendor for X-Tech. I'm saying that purely from a screen accuracy standpoint, and because the chrome is personally a little bit much for me. I'm not going to say the X-Tech one is better in every single way than the TXQ one. I do prefer the X-Tech one by and large, but specifically the recessed inset buttons on the TXQ one are very nice. I quite like that. The floating rocker switch on the outside of the control box on the X-Tech model is a bit more visually accurate to the Return of the Jedi prop, but in terms of overall tactile feel, I prefer the recessed buttons on the TXQ. And by contrast, the X-Tech V2 is currently only available empty, and mine has not yet been installed. I just got the chassis back from Breeze, but it will have two buttons set up under the clamp card, and you'll just click up for power, bottom for aux. Otherwise, though, when we're looking at visual accuracy between the three, the V2 is far and away the most visually accurate of the three. I mean, really, this is, like I mentioned, custom weathering, not screen accurate weathering. The V2 was available with screen accurate weathering if you wanted to go that route. I just went this way for personal preference. But if you do go the screen accurate weathering route, really all you need to do is add the gaffer tape on the neck and you're gold. The emitter proportions on this are perfect. The Graflex clamp is a real replica Graflex clamp. It fits on my Graflex. It has a J-lock. The PCB cards are appropriately sized. The D-ring is clocked appropriately. The only thing on here that is not perfectly screen accurate is the flat end of the mystery chunk here should be knurled. And I mean, there's no display pommel. It's vented pommel only for this one. But otherwise, this is like 99% for screen accuracy. This is like 90% for screen accuracy. And this is like 70%, 75% for screen accuracy. So if I'm looking for a hero, the X-Tech Cave Scene Hero from Return of the Jedi is a super solid choice. I would genuinely give it a 9 out of 10. I do not regret purchasing it one little bit. Meanwhile, for a V2, the X-Tech V2 is near perfect, I would say. As long as you can get a chassis for it and get it installed or install it yourself, this is an absolutely 10 out of 10 for screen accuracy, especially for the cost. These are not very expensive. They're very comfortable to hold. I'm a huge fan of the X-Tech V2 and cannot wait to get installing this. Additionally, I do have an extra one of the reveal boards here just to give you a look at them. If for whatever reason you have an issue with yours, they're really easy to replace because they're just attached in there with this pin connector. So you would just take your clamp card out and take out these two screws, lift the rails out, and then use a tool while your chassis is taken out to lift up the card. And boom, you're golden. As you can see, these switches are at a 90-degree angle, so you may need to actually lift this out and adjust the tension on this screw on the inside of the rocker switch. It's just a set screw that uses the same size Allen key as the retention screws for the blade. You don't want it to be too tight because then the actuators on the other sides or on the ends of the rocker switch won't actually touch the switches. And you don't want it to be too loose because then you can potentially damage the switches if you push too hard. So you may need to toy with it to get it just right if it doesn't feel just right when it comes out of the box, but it's really not that difficult to do. And then you just go ahead and slide your clamp card back in and you're golden. So now let's really put a blade in this and put it to the test.
He would bring destruction and pain and death at the end of everything I love because of what he will become. For the briefest moment of pure instinct, I thought I could stop it.
So, final verdict on the X-Tech Luke Skywalker Return of the Jedi Cave Scene Hero Saber. Like I've said already earlier on, I gotta give this like a solid 9.5 out of 10. The only half point, maybe point that I could ding it on is the slight deviation from perfect screen accuracy. Price-wise, fantastic. Great value for how accurate it is. Sure, it's no mom of all heroes, but value-wise, for what one of these costs, I would absolutely recommend this. This is one of the very first Luke Hero Sabers I would recommend for someone who wanted one with 2-button system, with a Proffieboard V2, with data line for the LEDs on the control box. Yes, there are other options to get all that, but best value, I would say, definitely this one's a contender. I'm a huge fan of this hilt. It's one of my favorites in my collection, and I know I say that all the time, but really, if I had to pick like a top 3, it would be this. It would be my 89 Sabers Graphics Supreme, and maybe my Dark Saber by TXQ and Laredo Sabers, maybe my Master Replicas Darth Vader that was converted to Proffi by Breezy Saberworks. Those two would definitely both be contenders, but this and my 89 Sabers Graphics Supreme, easy auto includes for my top 3. So I'm being honest and genuine when I say like 9.5. I love this thing. I am not trying to oversell it. I really enjoy this. It's fun to wear on my belt. Really comfortable to hold. Looks really fantastic on the shelf with all my other original trilogy hilts. I mean, I really don't have a bad thing to say about any X-Tech hilt that I've ever gotten. There's a reason that I partnered with X-Tech and work with them. They're a phenomenal place for lightsabers. Great value, great build quality, great designs. They're just great people. I love working with them. I love the products. I'm not selling them for the money. I'm selling them because I believe in them. I really do enjoy them. And I don't think that I own more lightsabers by a single individual saber company in my current collection besides X-Tech, now that I'm thinking about it. So yeah, I'm not trying to be biased when I talk about how much I love this hilt. It really is a solid, fantastic hilt, and I'm a huge fan of it. So, as always, this has been kybercodex. Thank you again for stopping by. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and may the Force be with you.